I grew up with quite strict parents. If I wanted to watch a movie or something, I had to ask for permission, and it would be a lengthy process of me asking, them saying no, and me pleading my case until they finally agreed. One time when I was around 13 years old, I managed to convince my parents to let me watch The Ring. I don't know if you've seen this movie before, but I remember being very creeped out by it, and one of the most memorable scenes was the girl crawling out of the TV. So when my parents went to bed and I was alone in my room watching, I decided to put the TV to the volume that goes up to 100, on a scale from 1 to 10. So I turned it all the way up, and then I watched that scene where she crawls out of the television with the volume at max. Well, maybe I should have chosen a different movie, because that night, I swear, I heard every single creak and pop of the house, and I couldn't help but think that maybe Samara Morgan was coming to kill me for turning her movie up to full volume. I tried to distract myself by playing some video games, but after about an hour, I began hearing footsteps in my hallway. Obviously, I just thought it was my parents getting back into our room, but then the footsteps stopped right outside of my bedroom door and I froze. I could hear my blood rushing in my ears. Then I heard a knock on the door, but it was not the kind of knock that someone would make if they were standing in the hallway. It sounded like the doorknob was being turned. My mind raced. Who would be trying to get into my room in the middle of the night? Was it a burglar? An intruder? Or was it Samara? I told myself it was ridiculous. No one was going to break into my house in the middle of the night to murder me. Still, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something bad was about to happen. Then the doorknob turned again, this time faster and louder. It turned completely around, and then the door slowly creaked open. Just a sliver of light escaped under the door and slithered across my room. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out of my throat. I wanted to move, but I couldn't bring myself to budge an inch. Paralyzed by fear, I sat there listening as the door continued to creak open. The small gap grew wider and wider until the entire door was open, and the light from the hallway shone brightly into my room. I still didn't move. What felt like hours passed, and still, I sat motionless in my bed. Then I heard the sound of footsteps approaching me. They got closer and closer until they stopped right beside my bed. Whoever was there reached out a hand and gently brushed it across my blanket. Goosebumps erupted all over my skin. I squeezed my eyes shut and waited for whatever was going to happen. To me, a voice whispered right next to my ear, "Do you want to play a game?" I screamed and threw myself off the bed. I scrambled away from the door and looked back at the closet. I had a flashlight beside my bed that I used to ward off any monsters that might be hiding inside, which is ridiculous because I knew there weren't any monsters in there. But still, I grabbed it and shone the light inside the closet. There was nothing there except for my clothes. I opened the door and stared out into the hallway. The only thing I saw was my parents' closed bedroom door. Then I remembered how big of a baby I was being. I mean, what was I scared of in the first place? No one was going to break into my house in the middle of the night. And even if they did, my dad has a shotgun. I walked back into my room and climbed back into bed. I was shaking and sweating, but my breathing slowly began to calm down. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something had been there. I tried to go back to sleep, but I ended up lying in bed awake for hours. The next morning I got up and went downstairs for breakfast. I told my mom about the footsteps and the doorknob turning, but she just laughed and said, "Oh, that's silly." After school that day, I ran into my room and locked the door. I started rummaging through the closet, shoving clothes aside and searching for anything that might have fallen out of the walls or the door. Maybe I was looking for evidence to prove what I had seen the night before, but I found nothing. Frustrated, I threw everything back into the closet and onto the floor. That's when I noticed something weird. On the closet door, there was a keyhole. I knew I had never seen a keyhole in that door before. Could whoever had been in my room last night have used a key? Had they been living in my house the whole time? My thoughts were interrupted when I heard a voice behind me say, "What are you doing?" I spun around and saw my mom standing there with a confused expression. "Nothing," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just, found this keyhole. Do you know anything about it?" She stared at the keyhole for a moment. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "That's not a keyhole. Now, leave me alone. I'm busy." I nodded and backed away slowly. As soon as she turned back around, I knew that something strange was going on. Not only had she not answered my question, but why would she care if I found a keyhole in her closet? I had so many questions. Why was she acting so weird? Why did she seem so surprised when she saw me? And why was she hiding stuff from me? I considered asking my dad, but he was never home anyway. Plus, I didn't want him to get angry at my mom. Their relationship was already strained enough as it was. So I decided to keep quiet. But that didn't stop me from continuing to investigate. Over the next few days, I tried to talk to my mom about the keyhole, but every time I brought it up, she would either change the subject or yell at me to stop bothering her. It was clear that she didn't want me to know the truth, but why was she hiding something from me? Desperate to get answers, I started digging through my mom's things. I rummaged family photos and letters, desperately searching for something that would explain what was happening, and then I found it, hidden in the back of a drawer. I discovered a key. It was small and silver, and looked exactly like the kind of key that would fit the keyhole in my mom's closet. I held it in my hands, turning it over and over in my mind. What did it unlock? And why was my mom hiding it from me? I wanted to ask her, but after she had yelled at me so many times, I was too afraid, so I kept the key a secret, hiding it in my pocket whenever I left the house. I didn't know what it unlocked, but I hoped that if I followed my mom one day, I might be able to find out, and so I did. One afternoon when my mom left the house, I followed her. She drove down the street and turned onto a path that led to a secluded house at the end of the neighborhood. I stayed hidden in the bushes across the street, watching as she entered the driveway and parked her car. Then she came out of her car and walked toward the house. Curiosity overcame me. I crept out of my hiding spot and slowly made my way down the sidewalk. As I approached the house, I noticed that it looked strangely familiar. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was something about the porch and the windows that seemed vaguely creepy. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should keep following my mom or turn back. But my need for answers was too strong, so I pressed on. As I walked up to the porch, I noticed a rocking chair on the right side of the house. It was old and creaky, and the chains moaned softly as the wind pushed against them. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Something about this house, about the rocking chair, filled me with dread. Suddenly, the front door opened and my mom stepped out. When she saw me, her face drained of color, and she cried out in surprise. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How did you find this place?" I stared back at her, my mind racing. How long had she been hiding this from me? What was this house? And what was the rocking chair for? Before I could ask any of these questions, my mom rushed over and grabbed my hand. She pulled me away from the house and toward her car, practically dragging me along. Once we were inside the car, she turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Please, you can't tell anyone about this place," she begged. "If anyone found out, I'd be in danger." I looked at her, confused. "But why? What's going on?" I asked. She took a deep breath and looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry, but I can't tell you," she whispered. "It's just too dangerous." I felt a surge of anger. How could she keep secrets from me? I was her son. She should trust me. But I knew better than to push her. She was clearly scared, and I didn't want to make her more upset. As we drove home in silence, I couldn't help but feel like I had stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. What was this place? Why was my mom so afraid? And what was the rocking chair for? These questions echoed in my mind, and I knew that no matter what my mom said, I wouldn't rest until I found the answers.